leaving off with just a little bit of celebration. Oh, the music ended. Then I guess I will start speaking. Hi, I'm Kim Thompson-Pinder, and I'm the Extraordinary Word Ninja. And tonight I'm going to share my story with you about how 8 words derailed my destiny for 30 years. Now, how does every good story start? Oh yes, once upon a time, there was this little 4-year-old girl whose mother died of cancer. And yes, that little girl was me. Now, thankfully, I don't have this incredible sob story to share with you. So my mother didn't die when I was 4 years old, and yes, my mother died when I was 4 years old, but I didn't have this drunk, abusive father. Actually, my dad was amazing. And when my mother died when I was 4 and my sister was 2, a lot of family, a lot of friends, a lot of people told my dad that he should give us up for adoption. And in words that I cannot use in public, my father told them that either help him or go take a flying leap because he was raising his girls. And as amazing as my dad was, and maybe sometime if I get to come back on this stage again, I'll share with you the stories of Captain Patience and his sidekick Gullible Girl, aka me and my dad. And how many times I tried Captain Patience, including the time we ran out of dishwashing powder and I filled the dishwasher with half a bottle of liquid detergent. Or maybe I'll share with you the time that a cat accidentally got into our house when my father wasn't home, and I came up with the brilliant idea to stink the thing out with garlic powder. Oh well, I digress, maybe another time. Losing my mother left this incredibly big hole in my heart. And in grade 2, I finally got a female teacher. And she was everything I wanted to be. She was a teacher, she was beautiful, she was smart. And the day I started in grade 2, she became my mom. Now, she didn't know that, but in my heart, she was my mom. And I'd go home and I'd dream of night, my dad marrying her, and she would take care of me. And I remember in grade 2, if you can't already tell, I've got an incredibly vivid imagination that started as a child. And in grade 2, I could finally write down all of those words that had been going through my head and all those stories. And I remember the first time that I wrote a story, and I took those pieces of paper and I brought them to my teacher. And she loved them. She thought they were amazing. Well, you know, that's all that this 7-year-old little heart needed. And every day I wrote and I wrote and I wrote, pages after pages after pages. And every day I was bringing them in to my teacher. And looking back on it, I overwhelmed the poor woman. I don't know how old she was, but she wasn't that old. I don't know if she was married, and I don't know if she had any kids. But I can probably guarantee you in the 70s, they did not have a course in teachers' college on how to deal with emotionally needy, grieving 7-year-old little girls. And so one day, she said the 8 words that changed my destiny. You're not a good writer. Please stop writing. And in that moment, my heart was crushed. And I decided inside of myself I was never going to write again. Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, I graduated high school, so obviously I wrote something again. But I didn't write from my heart. I wrote because I had to. Now, at 16 years old, I got a stepmother. Now she's my mom. Back then, she was my stepmother. I got married in my early 20s. I had kids. And my husband and I made the decision that one of us would stay home because we both came out of situations where we spent a lot of time with babysitters. And since my husband had a lot more earning potential than me, he went to work, I stayed at home. A few years into that, I needed to do something. I love being a mom. In fact, I'm a grandmother now. Love it. But back then, I needed something, and we needed to bring in more money, so I became an entrepreneur. And so for over 20 years now, I've been doing that. But it hit a point where I came to the crossroads. And I've had two major crossroads that determined my destiny. This was the first one. I had an opportunity to get a website. This was back probably around 2011. And I was so excited. A website, this is cool, because back then they weren't as easy to make as they are now. And somebody was going to make me a website. And so he sent me all the information, and he said to me, oh, and by the way, you get a blog. I emailed back, what's a blog? And he emailed me back, you have to write. I don't remember what the rest of the email said. My words centered in on write. And those 8 words, you are not a good writer, please stop writing. And there was about 90% of me that was ready to just ask for a refund and just never have a website. But there was this still small voice inside of me that said, Kim, you're not 7 years old anymore. And you're pretty good at learning things. And you did pretty decently in English. So maybe you might not be the greatest writer out there, but I'm sure you could probably write something that would help somebody. And I sat there, and I thought about it. And I thought about it. Thought about it some more, and then I finally said, okay, I'm going to try to write 1 blog post, but that's it. If it doesn't turn out, that's it. I'm done, nothing. So 3 days later, and I don't know how many crumpled pieces of paper, because back then I wrote everything on paper and then typed it into the computer. I had a 1-page blog post. And I put it on my site, and I had a few people read it. And guess what? They liked it. In fact, they kept telling me how much what I wrote was helping them in their business. And so that's all that heart needed. I started writing more and more blog posts. And about a year into it, the next crossroads came. Because I realized that I needed to write books. And I was like, okay, I'd gotten over my fear, I had forgiven my teacher, I was going to do this. I'm going to write a book. 6 months later, I'm still staring at a blank screen. And I'll never forget the day when I sat there staring at that screen, and the tears were rolling down my eyes. And I said, that's it. I'm not doing this anymore. I can't do this. I can't keep doing this. I was thinking it day and night, and I could not write a single word. And even now, I can still feel those feelings I felt back then. And I remember sitting there, and I whispered up a prayer. I said, God, I can't do this. I need help. And all of a sudden, still small voice said, well, why don't you just write down all the ideas you have? I mean, if nothing else, you'll have blog posts for years to come. And all of a sudden, I had that little glimmer of hope. And for 3 weeks straight, day and night, I wrote ideas. I had a pen and paper beside me at night, and I would sit up very quietly at night so not to wake up my husband, and I'd pick up the piece of paper and I'd be writing in the dark. You can imagine what it looked like the next day. 3 weeks later, I took all of those ideas and I organized them. And suddenly, it became very clear why I could not get that first book out. I had 3. And that revelation was what I needed to get started. And actually, in the course of the next year, I published 3 books. And from there, in 2015, my son was getting married. I needed money. And so I started ghostwriting, and RTI Publishing was formed. But I want to leave you guys with something tonight. Whether it was yesterday, whether it was when you were a child, we've all had words that were spoken over us. Now, some of those words were positive, but for many of you, those words were negative, and they've held you back from your destiny. And I'm here to tell you today, it's time to let those words go. Because even if those words were spoken yesterday, you're not the same person. And you can make the choice to let those words go and to continue to move forward. Because words have power, and the only power they have is the power that you give them. So I want to encourage you as I close tonight that if you feel those words in your heart, it's about time you look at them and say, shut up, I'm not listening to you anymore. And go forward. Do something. Do something you've been wanting to do. It's your time, and the only time is now.
Staying power that I wish it did. So I'm really excited to share this story with you, and I think sitting down actually helps me to deliver it in a more authentic way, in a way that we're kind of chit-chatting in a room. So someone once told me that people that we normally call mentally ill were celebrated in different cultures. Ancient Greece, some African tribes, shamanism, they viewed these states as a pathway to enlightenment. When you show symptoms of what modern Western medicine perceived as mental illness, it was a gift. Hallucinations, psychosis, and crying. They were signs that you were a healer, and your community or tribe might gather around you in a circle, and they beat their drums. And then they beat their drums until your heart beat once again with your tribe and with the earth, and you would know that you and your gifts were safe within your community. I've just always been told that I'm sick, that I needed to be healed, and I've taken to heart that I've been wronged, damaged, and broken my entire life, and I was born this way. I noticed I wasn't normal very early. At about age 5 or 6, I realized that no one else felt the way I did. Kids were so carefree and happy. And I felt weighed down by everything, like sadness was all around me, crushing me, depressing me. I only absorbed all things sad. War, human conflict, starving children, and I still kind of have this thing with Sally Struthers' voice telling me to send money to the starving children in Africa, but I'm moving past it. But I didn't want to be different. I knew I was, but there was no celebration for the way I was. It was frowned upon to be who I was naturally, and I was naturally very sensitive. Stop your crying or I'll give you something to cry about. There's nothing to cry about. You have everything that you need. I learned to hide in closets when I got emotional. And I was found once by my school principal and sent to a psychiatrist who told my parents that I needed to be toughened up and to send me to school even if I had a temperature of 105. I was an extremely observant people watcher and learned quickly how to act appropriately in every situation. So I wasn't genuine, but I knew how to behave. At 6 years old, I became fixated on making sure others were happy because I knew what it felt like not to be. I had access to the feelings of sadness and despair my whole life, my whole beautiful, loving, family-oriented, safe life. And I wondered if I would be happy, and wondered if I could be a good parent. I kind of flew over the radar. I was a teacher's pet, I was friends with everyone, I was an award winner. I just didn't want people to notice that there might be something wrong. And I wore this mask well into my early 20s. I keep hearing that happiness is a choice, but it isn't. I guarantee you that it's not a choice. The easiest way I can explain how I've always felt is if we look at emotions as what they truly are. They're chemicals and electrical impulses. And we learn how to feel when we're babies with feedback from our parents and our environment. When our parents smiled at us and laughed, we felt a surge of dopamine, and we learned to call this feeling happiness. I think people with mental illness that isn't caused by a situation simply have a broken brain that either doesn't make these good chemicals or it doesn't recognize them. In my teens, I started slipping. I'd get angry easier. I had to work hard to cover the sadness. I was friends with everyone but felt so alone. Boys didn't like me. I was told that if I wanted boys to like me, I had to act less smart. Again, the way I was wasn't good enough, and I needed to change to make other people feel more comfortable. Everyone expected me to do big things, but inside I was wondering how the heck I would get through the next day. School was easy. Doing a project was easy. Getting straight A's? Easy. Not wanting to die was what was hard. Whatever I tried, I was good at. I just couldn't figure out how to be good at being happy, how to be good at living. I've been hospitalized several times, but was once hospitalized in Guelph in an 8-week program, and a doctor pegged me within 5 minutes of talking to me. He said, "You're a people pleaser, a good girl." And I said, "Yes." And he challenged me to break the rules while I was there. So he told me to sneak out, swear inappropriately, skip a group session. Swearing doesn't come naturally to me. I didn't know it then, but he wanted me to realize that I could survive when things go wrong and when people didn't like me. That I didn't need to exhaust myself just to make the picture look good for everybody else. I started taking chances, making some poor decisions, even getting a little wild and crazy for me. I even got into a relationship with someone who I knew was a little iffy, and I ended up having to charge him with criminal harassment, and that was weird for me. Didn't feel funny at the time, but hindsight. I was always stable Shelley, smart, common sense Shelley, making all the right choices, and I actually let an abusive person into my life, so I understand now how that entire relationship works. But I still always saw the good in people because I needed to, I wanted to, and I kind of like that about me. My former husband and I separated while I was in a psych ward. I was not in a position to fight, but it's also not in my nature to fight. I had spent so much time citing reasons for my sadness. I'm feeling kind of down, it must be my job, so I quit. I'm feeling uninspired, so I break up with a really great boyfriend. Brene Brown says if you walk through the world looking for reasons, you'll find them. But they weren't real for me. I hadn't accepted the fact that my brain was broken, so I didn't get to feel what I should have felt in every single situation. Why did I spend so many years trying to assign reasons for my sadness? Because I wanted to believe that the agony that I felt was because of something real. And it wasn't, it was just depression. Lots of people ask me what it's like being in a mental health hospital. And it's where I get better, but it can also be terrifying. I've often heard people say that high-functioning sick people like me shouldn't be where the window lickers are. The sociopaths, the angry addicts who stare in your eyes grinning while they pee their pants because the bathroom door is locked. The girl with schizophrenia pacing around convincing herself not to kill everyone. The strange man who sneaks into your unlocked room at 2 a.m. looking for snuggle time. But it isn't always these heartbreakingly ill patients whose behavior is upsetting, because they're really sick. And I've seen with my own eyes the transformation that they take when they actually get the treatment that they need. And it's miraculous, and some of these people actually become my friends. Sometimes it's the doctors who are scary. The ones who tell you you're just an attention-seeking downer, or you're just a woman, it's your job, and you should be happy to give your husband a blowjob whenever he asks for it. I've had people threaten to stop being my friend if I accepted electroshock therapy as treatment. I've had others voice their shock over the fact that I'm smart and not like a zombie post-ECT. I've spent my life having to prove myself over and over again. I've been judged and shunned and shamed. And death has been an option for me for a long time. I'll be driving and have to resist the urge to smash my car into the bridge. I wish for death to find me so I wouldn't have to decide to die. I'd even wish for something catastrophic to happen so I could be ill and broken and tired and find healing, guilt-free and with all the support I could ask for. I wouldn't have to hurt my loved ones. I was looking for relief from this agony that I felt, and death was relief from not feeling and from the emptiness. From looking at my life, looking at Derek and my son, and not feeling what I know I should feel when I look at them. I didn't want my life to end, but I wanted my life as it was to end. A sidebar about Derek, we actually met while I was receiving ECT, and he stayed, which I think is a pretty good guy. I've been through so many medication trials, suffered some serious side effects, received more than 50 rounds of electroshock therapy, and went through 6 weeks of daily RTMS treatment 7 times in the last 4 years. I've done a lot to my brain, and I've lost the memories of my son growing up. And my memory is spotty at the best. My family's really good, though. They take lots of pictures whenever we go places, just in case that's the day I'm not going to remember. I've even had an ileostomy bag and had my colon removed. Gut-brain relationship? I don't know, but there's something to be said for it. Would I do all of it again? Yes. Because it means I'm still here to try and make more memories. I'll do what I have to do to keep my brain going. This is a life sentence for me, though, and it's fairly predictable now. The remission time in between ECT is about 2 years, and the remission time in between RTMS is about 7 to 8 months. So when I start feeling bad, if I don't notice, my family will notice, and they'll tell me, and I'll call my doctor, and we'll set up treatments again, and I'll start treatments again, and reset my brain. Your body has a homeostatic state, and when my brain is reset and I'm doing well, I still know that it's going to return to the state because that's the way I was born, and that's the way my brain just naturally wants to be. But despite my broken brain, I've managed to create a good life. And I somehow created a son who I haven't yet ruined. 2 years ago, my 13-year-old son, Zach, spent 29 days running, walking, and biking from Barrie to Ottawa to raise funds and awareness for youth mental health. His goal was to raise $10,000. The moment he crossed the finish line, it was an incredible moment. It made me realize that it was worth everything that he jumped over. He jumped over so many hurdles. He learned so much about himself. And it made me realize that I could share because he said he was inspired by me to do this in the first place. And to date, Zach has raised over $134,000 for the new Child and Youth Mental Health Unit at RVH. He was quoted as saying, if things had been different when my mom was little, maybe her life could have been better. And I don't want to be cliche and say that I wouldn't want things to have changed, but what would I have wanted? To have felt accepted, to have felt celebrated, to have felt real, to have felt heard, to have felt. Depression is now the leading cause of disability worldwide. Think about that for a moment. Depression, not heart disease, not cancer, not stroke, causes more disability than any other health condition on earth. I used to be bitter about how lonely the fight is, and I'd say to my mom, where's my fucking cupcake? Where are my casseroles and the bell to ring on my last treatment? There's no badge of honor for survivors. We need to celebrate the survivors of mental illness, the warriors with cupcakes and casseroles and acceptance. This is a life and death battle. It's taken me over 25 years to find my treatment and my tribe and the gift in my broken brain. True love, connection, and acceptance I receive from my family and friends is a gift. Helping others is a gift. I have people that celebrate my last treatments with cupcakes. And I like who I am. I'm kind, sensitive, empathetic, I'm smart, I'm generally positive, and I'm still a good girl, sometimes a doormat. And I heard someone say, don't cross oceans for people who wouldn't cross a puddle for you, which I thought was good advice. But then someone else spoke up and said, no, do it. Do cross oceans. Cross oceans, climb mountains, don't judge people. No wondering whether they're worth it or not. And then I changed my mind. So whatever life throws at you, find your own path of healing and walk to the beat of your own drum.
This is probably, I've done thousands of presentations, more so for solutions and like really business-based stuff, but this is the first time that I'm being very public and open with people that I don't even know. And I thank you for your energy today, and trust me, I need it. I couldn't even keep my heart inside my jacket when I was back there.
You got this. You got this.
Thank you. So if any of you are into numerology, you'll know that numbers are very lucky. And if you're at the casino, you'll know that numbers are lucky as well. So in my case, 777 was the key number that changed my life forever. That was the day that I actually had my MS attack on July 7th, 2007. And that was the day that changed my life entirely, changed my mindset and everything I do. I don't even know why I'm getting so emotional, but okay.
So good.
So then, this is how my story starts. So I was 34 years old, working in sales, wining and dining clients, having the time of my life, trying to eat well, trying to do everything I should do as a new dad. And one week in July, I just started to feel really tired. And I'd be walking down, and all of a sudden my legs would just start to give out. And I just thought of it as fatigue. But all in all, what was happening was I was having an MS attack, and I didn't even know about it. So one Friday, I was really tired. I was walking my son up the stairs to change him. He was 5 months old at the time, and I buckled on the stairs. And luckily enough, I managed to get my other knee up and hold him there. But what had happened was I was like, something has just really gone wrong. I didn't know what to expect. I was scared, so I got my son taken care of and took myself over to the hospital. I didn't know what was going on, and I just knew that I don't know what to do here. So after numerous MRIs, CAT scans, different diagnoses from doctors, finally a smart doctor in there, or I won't say smart altogether, because he did a spinal tap on me and ended up hitting my nerve, and that paralyzed me for about 5 hours. So I was curled up in a ball, crying my eyes out, because that was probably the most pain I'd ever been in my life. Even more than having a bone coming out of my wrist when I was snowboarding or anything like that. So finally, they diagnosed me with having demyelination in my brain on the right side. And so this is why my left side was totally knocked out. But when I went into the hospital, I was going in with no arm and no leg. I was literally just dragging half of my body around. And from that point, it was one of those things where they said, you know what, you need to go on medication right away. When I read all the side effects, I was like, no, I'm not doing it. There was just too much there that I was like, you know what, I'll be sicker from your medication than I will from finding an alternative. So this is when I decided to ask my wife, thank you, and other people in the field to say, you know what is our options here? Because I'm not doing the medicinal route. So thankfully I found a naturopath who actually had MS herself. She's been diagnosed as not having it now either, neither with myself either. But I went right away into an anti-inflammatory diet. So what that meant was things like alcohol, red meat, wheat, gluten, sugars. I was really strict for the first 2 years and cut all of those out of my diet. And I did it because I was like, I don't know what the heck just happened to me. And if this is what these people are telling me, and this is the side that I'm aligning with, I need to do this. So I did it for about 1.5 years, I would say. And alongside of that, I got right into therapy because the doctors and the hospital said, yeah, you'll start therapy in a few weeks. But at this point in time, my legs were already fatigued. I already had no muscle. I was like, by the time I get into your clinic, I'm not going to have a body left to even rehabilitate. So thankfully, we had connections. We got myself into a clinic right away, and doing even just simple calf raises were the toughest things that I ever had to do. This was one of those things where I've gone to work, I've worked out all the time, but I think these were even tougher than doing squats. And once I got through it, I realized that, hey, this is working. And when I noticed that my legs were starting to function again, it was great. But at home, I was in a very dark space. To be honest, I wanted to take my life like that. But I knew that I would probably fuck that up. And then I'd be in a worse place than sorry for swearing, Sharon. But I knew that I'd be in a worse place than I was already in. Here I am trying to put half my body together. And then if I was to do something as silly as that, who knows what I would have to deal with. And I just realized that, you know what, this is the darkest place I've been to. And I need to get out. So thankfully, I started to read a lot of books, Robin Sharma's books, Robin Williams' books, and a lot of that gave me a lot of good ammunition to start to think differently. Because I was just thinking that, what's life going to be now? Who's going to take care of me? Who's going to take care of my family? Am I going to die from this? Because doctors they gave me the death sentence every single time, and I wasn't about to accept it. So it was one of those things where I was like, you know what? I'm going to fight this because all my friends will want to see me fight it, and I'm going to die trying. And thankfully, 12 years, I'm still going pretty good. Thank you. So really, the road to recovery for me was, because I'm a data guy, and so I needed to see results. I couldn't just have your touchy-feely, good, this is going to work, this is good. No, I needed to see results. So when I got to the point where I started to get stronger, I was able to run. I used to go to my MS clinic, to the top neuro in Canada, and I would show her how I could run back and forth. And I would ask her, I said, don't you want me to tell you how I'm doing this? Because I see younger people than me in walkers and wheelchairs. And she looked me straight in the face and just said, no. And it was one of those things where I realized then, this medical system that we have is not for me. And I stuck to the natural side of it. So through that, I realized that this works and it keeps working. And so I took neuro-linguistic programming too, because I realized in order to fix my body, I needed to fix my mind first. And so what NLP really is the study of how you think, how you speak, affects your overall life as well as those around you too. It's all based on energy, right? Every single illness starts as a thought within yourself, and if you don't address it, it becomes stronger and stronger, and in my case, it took my left side out. So it was one of those things where, you know, I try to make sure I do what I say, and I think the right way, and I say the right things, but my wife always corrects me and says, you've done this course, you need to go back to it. But I try to, you know, make sure that I can be as positive and purposeful as I can in my daily life. And it took me, I would say, about 3 years to get out into the clear. And from that, I started playing soccer again. I've been driving manual cars, racing cars all the time, because I said to myself, if I go to automatic, who knows what that left side's going to do again. So I had to keep it busy. And I think out of everything, it was probably the best thing that happened to me. And had it not happened to me, I didn't even know what kind of person I still would be today. And so there's a couple things that I kind of learned throughout this whole process, and a couple things that I live by daily. First and foremost, you have to love yourself enough to fight for yourself. That's key, because if we don't love ourselves enough, we're not going to do anything, and we're going to just play pity party all the time. Secondly, we have to align with the right people. So always I do an inventory of my circles to make sure that I'm aligning with those right people, because what we're bringing into our lives is what's going to manifest out as well. So always kind of keep that in check and make sure you're with that right team that's going to lift you up, pick you up, and keep you the most positive and happy throughout as well. Also, you know, and the third point is ask for rationale. Don't just take the whatever diagnosis or whatever answer they're giving you at face value. Question if it's not something that you truly align with. This is something that I don't think enough of us do. We'll just take a doctor's word and just say, okay, I'm going to be dead. But that's not the case, and you need to ask people, what is your rationale behind that? And if you don't agree with it, then it's up to you to get to your solution as well. So, I mean, these are some of the things that I've done kind of with my daily travels, and I find, you know, if people can just use their mind as that medicine that they've been equipped with, this is the thing that can truly move mountains. It's not medication, and I mean, in some cases, probably that world works, but what I found truly in my situation was positive mind, proper diet, and exercise, and just surrounding myself with the right type of light and energy, which is what did it for me. I think I'm pretty much, I think I finished early.
Have you ever had a friend of yours abducted and murdered by organized crime, their body never to be found again, and closure and elusive dream for their family and everybody who knew them? I have. I was born and raised in Mexico, and I'm here to talk to you tonight about the dangers of normalizing violence. I was about 13 years old one night, sitting with my best friend, you know, at a park bench, and we were chatting away like teenage girls do, when suddenly, as if in this strange choreography, every single street light went down. And before we could even look at each other and figure out what the heck was going on, cop cars flooding our street. Their lights are going, we can hear their boots hitting the pavement, they're running, and we bolted. We ran to my house and we locked ourselves in because we knew better than to stick around and figure out what the heck was going on. The news came out shortly after. The reason they were there that night was to apprehend one of our neighbors, who was found to be the leader of the band of abductors. Horrible people doing unspeakable things to others for money. And I remember the conversations that ensued when these news came out. Everybody in our neighborhood, everybody in our street, so shocked. everybody was like, oh my gosh, but we've known them for so long. How could this be right under our noses all these years? We've played with our kids. We didn't know. But slowly, from shock, those conversations changed and they morphed into something else. And it became a dialogue that is very familiar to any of us who have grown in that kind of environment. Those dialogues morphed into, oh well, we know this is how it is here, isn't it? We never really know who we're spending time with or sharing space with. Good old Mexico, you never know. Normalizing violence. Perhaps an example that it's easier for us here in Canada to relate to is seeing what is happening right now south of the border with the people in the US. We see their kids coming back to school wearing bulletproof backpacks. And we're able to see that and recognize it for what it is, and we're shocked. We're like, oh my gosh, how is this even happening? But then all it takes is listening to the dialogues of those who are in that environment. And what do we hear? We hear, oh well, this is what we got to do now in these difficult times. This is how we go about things. Normalization of violence. We hear about babies being kept in cages away from their families. We hear about asylum seekers being denied help even though they're fleeing conflict or even natural disasters. And in Canada, we sit here and we're shocked, as we should be. But what do we hear from them? Justifications in the shape of, oh well, if they had only gone about immigration the right way, they wouldn't be in this mess, right? Justification of violence. Now, Mexico and the US didn't get to the point that they are right now overnight. It didn't happen in the blink of an eye. It didn't happen with fairy dust powder. It has been years, decades of systematic abuses and problems that have escalated. But the real big problem is that the people who are involved in it have allowed themselves to just become familiar enough with the situations happening. They are no longer trying to resist it. They are merely trying to survive. And I can relate, because when you live in that world, that's all you have left. And when you come out of that world, it takes years of your life trying to put the pieces back together and trying to realize that the things that you experienced are not normal and they're not okay. I was 16 years old when a good friend of mine died by suicide. He hung himself. What I did not tell anybody at the time was when he confided in me. He told me about his need for connection and how it drove him to the worst people in the worst circumstances. He told me about the things that he was forced to do. He told me about the bodies that he buried in the ground. He also told me about the nightmares that followed after. I was 16 at the time. I didn't know how to help him. There was no talk back then about mental health or seeking therapists or anything like that. And to make things more complex, there was a deep stigma, and still is a deep stigma, for people who, for whatever reason, end up in those kind of life circumstances involved with those kind of very dangerous people. Well, he asked for it. I mean, what was he expecting, right? Like, he got what was coming to him. Normalization of violence. I can look at this audience right now, and I see your faces, and I know that you're hearing me, and I know that you're connecting with what I'm saying, and I know that you feel my words, and I know that you feel for him, because ultimately he paid for it with his life. But what happens when we step out of here and we look at our very own addicted and struggling in our downtown, and we roll our eyes, and we just kind of wish they would go away, because why can't they get their shit together? It's so easy, right? So easy to otherize them. And yet, what would they tell us about the nightmares that followed them? The problems are complex. There is poverty, there is inequality, there is violence against women. There is entire systems that have lasted for decades, centuries, in place that have created the massive problems that we have right now. And when we focus on the problems, it's almost difficult to breathe because it feels like, what can I ever do to ever impact the massive amount of issues that we have going on right now? So I don't want you to focus on any of that. We're gonna focus on what we can do and what I'm putting on you that we're gonna fucking do, because we have no choice. The alternative, it's like I want you to think of me like I'm coming to you from the future. I have seen what happens when we allow for corruption, for inequality, for poverty, for addiction, for mental health, for all these issues to grow and become stronger. I come from that. You don't want that, and I don't want that, and I'm not going to allow that to happen here. And you're in it with me. Sorry. Recently, there was an entire operation that happened in our city in which 42 Mexican workers were rescued from modern-day slavery conditions. I don't know the details of exactly what their life was like while they were being trafficked in those months when they were kept in inhumane conditions, but I have often wondered, because they were still working in resorts, in hotels, so I have often wondered, did any client ever pick up that anything was wrong with one of them? Did anyone ever take the time to look at them in the eye and, get a glimpse into like, whoa, something's not right here? I hope that happened, because it breaks my heart to think that we are so disconnected from one another that we can't even see the pain in another person's eyes. All it takes for you is to go to one of our local policemen and ask them how common is sex trafficking in our region. They can give you stories. It's so common. It's so common. And I want to ask you today, I want you to reflect back on your everyday life. How many times have you and I crossed paths with a woman or a girl who has been trafficked for sex? And because we are failing to even look at other humans in the eye, we didn't even clue in, and we missed a chance to save a life. How many more chances are we going to miss? Are we going to change it finally? I hope we do. Now again, poverty, inequality, discrimination, racism, violence against women, these are all the dreaded ingredients, and they already exist here where we live. And it is up to us to regain a sense of humanity and preventing them from growing into anything worse. It's overwhelming, isn't it? Like we hear about, I'm telling you about all these big issues. And like I said, they've been in place for decades and so many people, and it's everyone's responsibility, and it's just so much to take. I don't want you overwhelmed tonight. I don't want to leave you with a sense of dread of the world coming down on you. All the opposite. The antidote to despair is action. And so I'm going to give you action that we can effectively start taking today. Now, I don't care who you are. I don't care what you do for a living. I don't care what you've done in your past. I don't care who you're related to or what. Nothing matters. What I can tell you right now is that I know for a fact every single one of you here has kindness to some degree or another. And so what is preventing you from using that kindness in every single interaction that you have with another human being? Because here's the thing, our world is starved for connection. When we see people doing terrible things, lack of connection. When we see disengagement, and when we see school shooters, and when we see addiction, and when we see so many other problems that I have touched on tonight, lack of connection. And so what can we do right now as responsible human beings in it together for the rest of the world, because we're all in this together? We start connecting, and we start connecting, and we start talking about community, but we can't have connection and community until we have kindness. That is the basic framework of everything that we do. Can you imagine what life would be like if every single interaction that you have with another person is based off of kindness? What would that look like? When you're willing to look people in the eye and have conversations with them, you're no longer scared of anybody else, you just have kindness. Now mind you, this doesn't mean that you stop fighting for the things that you believe are right. This doesn't mean that you stop advocating or being loud or giving feedback or confronting the people that need confronting. You still do that, but you do that with a basis of kindness in your heart. What would our world look like then? And I want you to know that tonight I am leaving this stage so freaking eager and excited to learn what your style of kindness is going to look like from now on. Thank you.
First thing I have to do is take my shoes off. Anybody who watches my show knows I don't wear shoes. So, what I want to share with you this evening is the story of my journey out of wounded darkness into joy. As Matt said, I was born into a family of 7 at the time. I was the 6th girl. Very strict Baptist home. And I was given a good biblical name, Deborah. We moved into my uncle's home, and there was 5 of us still at home, and never less than 4 boarders, so a lot of strangers around the dinner table. The first time I was molested, I was 6. It was a boarder. I didn't tell anyone because I didn't know it was wrong. I didn't know. When I was 8, my youngest sister was born on my birthday. The one thing, wrong size, wrong color, and you can't send it back. But what happened was there was a new kid in town and I was no longer the favored baby. First disconnect. When I was 9, we moved to a trailer court and I met Linda. Linda had lots of brothers. They were fascinating to me because I only had one. And one of her brothers used to watch me all the time and follow me around and whisper things to me, and he made me very scared. But I never told anybody. I didn't know how. When I was 11, I was molested by a neighbor. I didn't say anything. I didn't know what to say or who to tell. When I was 13, we moved to a trailer court out of town. And it was expanding, so there was lots of construction workers around, and there was one fellow in particular that I noticed he was watching me all the time. And this was a familiar thing, so I started to get scared. But I also realized I had some sort of power that attracted these people to me. So I thought it was my fault. And then the owner of the camp used to trap me back in the clubhouse. He was a big man, and he'd trap me against the back wall. And he'd tell me all the things he wanted to do to my body. I didn't even know what the words meant. But I knew it was wrong, and this time I knew it was my fault. It had to be. So I left home at 17, swore I'd never say God again. Got a job in a factory, and I fell in love. It was wonderful. And then he went away traveling for a while, and he sent me a postcard from California telling me he'd be home soon, and he had an important question for me. And I waited, and I waited, and I waited, and finally he called. And he said he wouldn't be seeing me anymore. He was getting married. So I raced to my sister's home in Toronto. I was close to this particular one at the time, and she and her husband welcomed me in and began to give me alcohol, and we drank for hours. Finally, my sister went to bed, but my brother-in-law poured me another drink. I finally went and put on my nightgown, and I crawled into the covers on the couch and passed out. I woke up to him raping me. And I sobbed and I cried, but I didn't scream because I didn't want to scare my sister. And I passed out again. So when I woke up in the morning, I knew something terrible had happened. And I also knew that God had stamped me with a big tattoo on my forehead, and it said, garbage. I knew it was my fault. That was the beginning of a lot of alcohol, a lot of partying, a lot of guys. That was garbage. When I was 20, one of my sisters said to me, you know, we never called you Debbie when you were little. And I said, I know. Why did you do that? And they said, well, because your name was actually supposed to be Jessie. And I went, that's it? That's what's wrong with me. I have the wrong name. So I went to Osgood Hall and student council and got a package and changed my name, and Jessica Lynn Brandon was born. Funny, it really didn't change any of the issues. I thought it would, but it didn't. So I continued to drink, and I continued to party, and I continued to hide inside everything that I knew was me, because I was a monster. I had to be. When I was 26, I tried to tell one of my sisters what had happened to me, but she shut me down. She didn't want to know. So I got married. Easy solution. That lasted a year. When I was 34, I was in my second marriage, and it was on the skids, and he said, you have problems and you need to fix them. So I called the Rape Crisis Center, and within a week I was in an incest survivor group. That was the beginning of the change. Now, a lot of things have happened in between then and now. I went to confront my family. I say confront, I just needed to talk to them. I needed them to know what had been happening to me. And I was disowned. So there I was out in the world by myself. There was 40 people that hated me. Big family, lots of kids. My second marriage ended. I went along, still drinking, still partying. Got engaged, got pregnant, got unengaged. He didn't want any more children. So I had her on my own. And while I was pregnant, I bumped into this lady who took me to a reading group. It was a spiritual reading group. They'd already been running for 3 years, and I was a member for 12 years. They were God-sent, although I couldn't have said it then. They became my new family. And one day there I was crying and telling my story yet again to someone I thought was listening. Turns out she was. She put her hand on my knee and she said, I know your story, dear. Now tell me who you are. That was the beginning of the real journey. And I began to seek people out and ask questions and try to figure out why I was so broken and wounded. What had I done wrong? And they told me I hadn't done anything wrong. What I needed to do right was to learn to love myself, to learn to believe in myself. It took a long time, and I often worried about that. Why did it take me so long to get to that knowledge? It took what it took. I needed the lessons that I had. There was a lot of them, a lot of challenges, but you know what? Every one of those challenges was an opportunity. It was an opportunity to bring me closer to myself, to the real me. It brought me faith. It brought me spirit. Spirit had been talking to me for a long time. I didn't know. There was one time that all of these things had happened, and I fell to my knees and I said, God, why are you trying to kill me, hacking off pieces of me? Just do it. And I clearly heard a voice say, I'm not trying to kill you. I'm trying to show you that you don't need anything or anyone to be who you are. Just step forward. That's the real tattoo. Step forward. Spirit is always around us. I talk to Spirit every day, and he, she, it, they talks back. I live a life of so much joy now, and that's become my mission because I know where I was, and I know what I went through, and I know what it took to change everything in my mind and realize that I'm a perfectly imperfect child of God. I'm not a religious person. I am a reverend, but I'm non-denominational. But what I want you to know about all of this is what I learned. As Oprah would say, this I know for sure. You are your own hero. You can survive anything. And you are 100% responsible for creating joy in your life. You are your own guru. Thank you. Namaste.
Yes, two-time cancer survivor. As I like to call it, season 1 and season 2. We all have those moments in life where we kind of think, yeah, that's not going to happen to me. No, I eat well, I'm vegan, I'm gluten-free, I'm watching what I do in life. That's not going to happen to me. That can't happen to me. Whatever it is that I heard on the news or read in a newspaper clipping, no, not going to happen to me. 2009, it happened to me. You're sitting in a doctor's office thinking you got a lump in your throat. Could have been swollen glands. Could have been a million things. Then the doctor says, you have nasal pharynx carcinoma. What is that? I said. Well, it's a type of cancer. And then he started saying other words. And then immediately I thought of, when you hear the word cancer, everything else just sounds like mumbled noise, like Charlie Brown's mom, like cancer. And then all of a sudden your brain just goes, oh my God, I'm dying! No, cancer. And he's still talking and I'm not listening to a damn word he's saying. What the hell is nasal pharynx carcinoma? Cancer. Me. I never smoked. That's what I accustomed to it. Like, that's a cancer person, right? Who smokes or doesn't live right. Then he starts talking about this disease. It's very popular. It's very well known within the Asian communities throughout Asia. Nasopharynx carcinoma is a type of cancer that affects your sinuses. Breaks down your ears, nose, and throat. They're finding it more in North America with Mediterranean men. Those of Greek, Italian, and Portuguese descent. And the doctor looked at me and goes, are you Portuguese? And immediately my brain just kind of snapped back to reality. I'm like, did this guy just call me Portuguese? Now I'm Italian, and there's things you don't do in life. You don't step on Superman's cape, you don't shoot the bat signal out in broad daylight, and you don't call an Italian Portuguese. Because I immediately stopped talking or thinking about cancer. I'm like, why did this guy just call me? Why did he assume that? Was it something I'm wearing? Am I wearing an Ed Hardy shirt? No. Why go with Portuguese? Greek, Latino, maybe Jewish, I don't know, but Portuguese, really? And that's what was going through my brain. I'm thinking of the funny story I'm going to tell on the way home to my buddy, and I've just been diagnosed with cancer. So somehow I thought in my subconscious, okay, I'm going to handle this a bit differently, obviously. Now, yes, I'm funny by nature. I'm very sarcastic. And when I was telling my friends what happened, I'm like, and then he thought I was Portuguese. And my friends were like, dude, you just kind of skipped over the part that you have cancer. I'm like, no, you're not getting the funny part. He thought I was Portuguese. Oh, they're not getting it. But then it became a reality when treatment started. Now in 2009, season 1, that was the ugly cancer. That was the chemo, the radiation. It hit me all at once. If you never had cancer, if you don't know what it feels like, I was 33 years old. And the first thing to do is you're going to lose your taste buds. They'll be gone within 2 weeks of radiation. Huh. Like all my taste buds? Like everything will taste like wet garbage. Interesting, I said. Okay. So in that 2 weeks, I gained about 40 pounds of just like all my food that I love. And they were right. Just lost it all. No sense of nothing. I was hospital ridden. I couldn't eat properly. I couldn't function. Then the chemo started. Now, if you ever had chemo, well, the first 2 hours, like, it's not bad. Then all of a sudden you get this, what tastes like shit? And, oh yeah, that's nausea. It's like stinky ass burritos with diarrhea and a splitting headache hit you all at once. And I was sitting in my hospital bed just throwing up. And I'm like, oh God, is this ever going to end? And my roommate beside me, an older gentleman, early 60s, one night I woke up and I just started throwing up. It was 3 o'clock in the morning. I couldn't stop myself. I just could blah, blah, just waves upon waves of vomit. And he's like, just let it out, let it out. I'm like, oh fuck, I woke him up. Oh man, he's going to be pissed. Just let it out, let it out. That's all I heard from behind this curtain. Next day he wakes up, opened the curtain. His name was John. I'm like, sorry if I kept you up last night, John. He's like, no, I wasn't upset with you. I was cheering you on. You were what now? Cheering you on. Let it out, get it out of you. Just don't let it back in. Why would it be on the floor? It's in a bucket or it's in a, what? No, what? But he was speaking on a little bit deeper level than where my brain was at. Let it out. Just don't let it back in. Let it out. Just don't let it back in. Those words repeated in my head. Look, what do you mean by that? He's like, look at my wife. She comes to visit me every day. She's a nutcase. She was a warrior. I mean, if this guy's prescription in life was he'll need to take a Tylenol for the rest of his life, she'd freak. The whole thing? Can't you cut it in half? Oh my God, my poor husband. It's a Tylenol. Relax. So she only visited him for maybe 5 minutes a day because that's all he could bear. She was too much of a worry on him. This guy was stacked with positivity. I'm going to beat this disease. So when he was telling me, let it out, just don't let it back in. Let it out. Let it all out. Let that negativity come out. Just don't bring it back in. If you got to be sick, be sick. If you got to throw up to the best of your ability. Own it like a champ. I'm like, yeah. So I started doing that. And then I allowed myself to be that way. But in John's words, only do that for 10% of the day. The other 90, focus on your well-being. Take 10% and accumulate that to your worries. But that 90, keep it to your well-being. 10% to your worries, 90% to your well-being. It's this 90-10 rule that I suddenly adapted in my life. 90-10. And then I started applying it day by day, hour by hour, as I sat in that bed. Whatever's hitting me, I'm only going to let it affect 10% of my day, 10% of my week, 10% of the month. That's it. The other 90, I'm focusing on getting better. How? How am I getting better? Learning about what this nasal pharynx carcinoma is all about. Every day the doctors will come and educate me, tell me how the lump is decreasing through radiation, through chemo. Asking questions. Most of them were stupid questions. Yes, that's me. But I asked. Laughing was a big thing that helped me in that 90%. Now, if you know me, and you can kind of get a picture of what my friends are like, they're very inappropriate. So that's what I needed. Make the jokes. Make the cancer jokes. I had to laugh in the face of cancer because that's how I coped. Now, don't leave here thinking, well, Vince fucking laughed in the face of cancer. No, that's what worked for me. Vince, you got some sun. Did you go outside today? It's radiation, bitch. I go every day. That's what the glow that you're seeing. I was down to 140 pounds. I looked sickly lying in my bed. My sister, oh my God. Look at you. Look at you. I'm not going to talk about 140 pounds. Get my beach bod ready. I got this glow. I got lots of weight. Look it up, no? I'm almost as small. How can you make jokes at a time like this? How can you make jokes? Because if I don't, I'm going to let more of that 10% in. It becomes 15, it becomes 20, it becomes 25. No, I'll worry. I'll worry that 10% of the day. The other 90 is how I choose to focus on my well-being. And the last thing is love, obviously. You've got to surround yourself with the ones who love you, your family, your friends. Because they'll stand beside you no matter what. Now, season 2 happened in 2016. They couldn't give me the chemo and the radiation all over again. My body went through that once. They hit me with everything in the kitchen sink. See, I was 33 years old in 2009. That's when Jesus died, by the way. Just that. I'm just saying, Jesus died at 33. Where is that across? Whatever. But in 2016, I turned 40. I turned 40, and then a week later, that lump that was in my throat, that was scar tissue, but now they found a cell, and now we think that, just say it! Well, it's back, and it's pissed. Oh, the cancer's back and it's pissed. Is it really? But we can't do chemo and radiation. No. This is a little more vigorous, if you will. This is surgery. 6 hours. Slice my throat open. Now, the way the tumor was situated, the little bugger that it was in between my jugular vein, if you can see that. So a jugular vein going over top, and then a pack of telephone wires going underneath, called my nerves. And in between those two things was this scar tissue that was infected. Now, any doctor knows you're not going to cut the jugular vein and bleed out. I'm dead on the table. So, of course, he had to cut the pack of nerves. What does that pack of nerves lead to? Well, at the time, we didn't know. It looked like telephone wire. Couldn't ask me. I'm all cold. I don't want to cut. Well, yeah, red wire, blue wire. Just don't blow the place up. I woke up. I had no feeling in my mouth. From my ear to my jaw, from my neck down, no sensation. I started talking like this. Was that going to stop me? No. Little by little, you work at it, you improve your speech, and you get there. 90-10, 90-10. No matter what that problem was, just focus on how to be better. Now, this applies to cancer, but it could apply to anything. Anything in the world. Depression, divorce, stress. We all have it. Everybody can apply this 90-10 rule in their life. I'm sounding like an infomercial right now. Don't quote me on it. I'm just saying that a perspective of life to change and look at something from a different point of view, thinking this is what I could do to make my life better and not focus on this negative, can change wonders in your world. Everybody here tonight spoke about something that was bothering them and that was a struggle in their life, and essentially it's all their stories. This is my story. Those were all their stories. Each and every one of you right now, looking at me, is a story. We're all stories. When we're dead and buried, that's what we are. We're stories. Stories that will be passed on from a father to a son, from a mother to a daughter, aunts to and uncles to their nieces and nephews, grandparents to their grandchildren. That's all we are. We're stories. Maybe a year from now, maybe a week, maybe it's next Tuesday. You might be sitting somewhere, chit-chatting, having a drink with a friend, and you might say, "Did I ever tell you a story about this guy, Vince?" Thank you very much.
Thank you again, Vince. So everyone, that concludes the evening. But before we wrap it up, I wanted to say a very big thank you from the bottom of my heart, and Matt's as well. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for taking the time to be here with us. And thank you for bringing life to this project that we've put on. I can tell you that we went in with a whole lot of faith and not a lot of direction. Matt is the organizer, the planned one, the one that timelines everything, and I'm like, let's go. Let's do this. Let's put it on. We will tackle the hurdles as they come, and we did, and we conquered. But tonight was not about us. It was 6 people that got up here and shared their story. So let's bring them back out here and give them all a thank you to the 6 of you for sharing your stories, for being up here, for inspiring and creating that connection. And
the bar is open.
The bar is open. Woo-hoo! And thank you to the organizers.
downstairs
Until
for...
next time.
Yeah, until next time. Join us downstairs for a drink, get to know our speakers, and thank you all again.
Thank
Have
you,
a great
guys.
night.
Love you,